As we approach the end of March, I thought it would be useful and potentially interesting to use this platform to explain some of the successes, weaknesses, opportunities and threats around our business. What we're doing to mitigate these weaknesses and threats, and also, and equally as important, what we're doing to improve the successes and opportunities. I really want to use this platform to allow people to understand the business better, rather than it just being a weekly order and revenue update. I've spoken many times about the warehouse and how we're looking to not only scale our operations, but also make the current warehouse more efficient. To give you some understanding of our operation today, we currently operate out of an old cotton mill. We're based on the 3rd and 4th floor, hence why when the lift breaks down, it's so pivotal to our business. We pay a modest rent for this building, so whilst we're in the growing phase, the savings on the rent, combined with the obvious inefficiencies of operating from a 3rd and 4th floor, actually balance each other out and allow us to grow to a profitable state in a reasonable timeline. What we don't want to do is go and find a bigger warehouse that isn't right today, because it just wouldn't be right. So let's get the business into profit and then we can decide what we want to do. As you can see, the threat of only one goods lift that's shared has caused us some real issues, but we've managed to mitigate that by commissioning a second lift. This lift wasn't being used, so we've paid for it to be upgraded, and which gives us our own dedicated goods lift. This means basically we'll be able to sort of get more goods in and goods out in a more timely and efficient manner. To give you some idea of the volume of goods that we process, that's around 300 to 300 pallets of goods in each week, which also means if we're going to keep the balance on the warehouse right, then that's 300 to 350 pallets out each week too. And to put this into context, that's the equivalent of sort of around 13 full articulated lorry loads each week inbound and 13 outbound each week. So 26 articulated lorry loads of movement each and every week. At present, we've been using the 4th floor just while we sort it out as a holding sort of floor for stock. Now we're going to change this because just moving pallets internally just is inefficient. So we're going to locate both Boop and NutriCircle on this 4th floor, giving them their own dedicated floor. And this will allow them to have their own sort of dedicated picking and packing teams, or cells as we call them, which means they can store their goods on the same floor as the pick face, fewer movements and therefore more efficiency. And we're all about driving efficiency, certainly in the current warehouse, and this will ultimately drive more orders. Discount Dragon will then occupy the entire 3rd floor using exactly the same principle. Today, as I think we've discussed before, we can process around 500 to 600,000 picks per month. But let's just assume for this exercise that it's 550,000 picks each and every month. The question is, how do we allocate these picks? So to put this into context, Discount Dragon currently averages around sort of 16 picks per order. So if all the 550,000 picks that we can currently do were just Discount Dragon, we could do just over 34,000 orders a month. And that's great, but what about NutriCircle and Boot Beauty? And now you start to see some of the challenges that we have. On Boot Beauty, the AOV is good because we're selling sort of perfumes and high value items. And it also delivers a decent absolute margin. So that's a great business and a business that we want to scale. And you can see in some of the numbers that are coming through in orders that we are starting to scale that business. NutriCircle, slightly less in terms of AOV, but a very, very consistent customer base that comes back week in, week out. But we also know that Discount Dragon is the broadest church, so therefore the most popular. So it's really about how do we balance all of these to work sort of, in harmony together. So whilst, Boot Beauty and NutriCircle have less picks, around 5, you can see that if we focused just on them and didn't do any Discount Dragon, then we could actually do over 100,000 orders a month. But what about Discount Dragon? So as you can see, it's a real balancing act. We know we can drive customers with the marketing. That's really not an issue. We can see how we can scale them or the orders considerably. And with TV, radio, Meta, Google marketing, we can see how we can do that at scale. But it's about the balancing act. It's about balancing marketing spend, scaling the orders alongside our current warehouse capabilities. and also our promise to customers to get them their orders in a timely manner. So you can see when one of them spikes, it not only causes problems in the warehouse, it has a knock-on effect with customers and potentially with marketing too. We're fixing this to a greater or lesser extent with the additional floor, but what else can we do? Really, we've been pondering this long and hard, and we've been looking at the Discount Dragon sort of customer base. We can see that they're buying in bulk and they like buying in bulk. We can also see that when they buy in bulk, we're not having to split cartons. So therefore there's less packaging and less waste in the warehouse. And ultimately that means less picks. If they're picking a tray of beans rather than 3 cans of beans, then that's much more efficient, which in turn means we can pass on those savings to the customers and they get a better deal. So selling in multi-packs is a real win-win for everyone. Less packaging in the warehouse, greater efficiency, less picks, etc. And we've been testing this over the last few days on Discount Dragon, and we managed to scale picks down to around 11. And we think that with focus and a bit more sort of in the, marketing and offering trays out to customers, we can get that down to sub 10 as we move into April. So let's come back to the sort of the 550,000 picks that we can do. So if we can get Discount Dragon down to 10 and the others, let's say around 5, 5.5 each, it actually means we could do a lot more orders out of the door for the same warehouse costs. And then if we can prove this works on the 3rd floor, which we're now doing, it means when the 4th floor gets into full swing, we'll be able to replicate this success on 2 floors, not just 1. So getting this right will allow us to increase the number of actual orders we process each month, which means that we can start scaling the marketing and that becomes more efficient without having to increase costs.